born and raised in Chicago, Illinois on May 22nd, 1942.
I used to pick him up out of the crib, and he would be bouncing around, and he would nuzzle his head in my neck and chortle and gurgle and pull my hair, and he was a bundle of joy.
At only 9 months old, he was hospitalized with a case of the hives.
He didn't know I would be coming back. His little body was burning and itching. He wanted me to lift him and hold him and comfort him the way I always had. And I was gone.
When Wanda went to pick up Ted, she had realized there was something very wrong with him.
I took that baby home, and I rocked and coaxed and cajoled and hugged and sang to him, and it took days before he would look at me. And when he looked, it was a sober look. He became a sober baby. I never had that nuzzling in the neck and hair pulling again, ever.
At the age of 6, Ted took an intelligence test which showed him to be a genius with an IQ between 160 and 170. A year after this test, Ted gained a brother, David.
Ted Kaczynski was accepted to Harvard University at the age of 16, full scholarship. His family thought this was going to be the beginning of a great future.
When Ted arrives at college, it's nothing like what he had dreamed of and hoped for, because he felt isolated, he felt different, he felt rejected at every turn.
Ted basically became a guinea pig in an ethically dubious psychological experiment conducted by Dr. Henry Murray.
They gave a kind of psychological test to incoming freshmen. They selected the people they thought were the most alienated, in effect, the most vulnerable, for this study to kind of determine what their breaking point might be.
Henry Murray was using students to study the effect of stress. He did that by subjecting them to long periods of intense interrogation designed to break down their egos, to break down their confidence.
From the time I was a child, I had this realization that my brother was special.
The bomb was placed inside of a book.
16 bombs in 17 years.
I asked Mom, why is he like this?
A hermit, someone who pretty much lived alone. Earlier today, the FBI blocked the entrance to the little roadway that leads up to Kaczynski's cabin. Neighbors say that the cabin had no heat and had no electricity, that Kaczynski lived in what was essentially a hermit lifestyle. The last time anyone saw the Unabomber, or was believed to see the Unabomber, was in Salt Lake City. A woman described the man there as tall and swarthy. But the people who knew Kaczynski in Lincoln, Montana say he looked quite different.
Oh, I'd guess 5'7", long beard, long hair. Everyday run-of-the-mill kind of a person, but he doesn't look like a picture, nor is he the same height as they claim he is. If I remember right, they were saying like 5'10" or 6 feet. He's nowhere near that.
Is he known around here? Is he a character around, or?
His personality, I would say, did not allow him to really cause anybody any problems. He just rode around town on his bicycle, went to the library on occasion, quite often. Well, he comes down out of this mountain, drives all the way into Lincoln, drives all the way back on his bike. No.
The situation now is that Kaczynski has not yet been arrested, we understand, and that agents are continuing to pore over the contents of his home. That also earlier this year, agents sought permission and got it to search the home of his parents in Chicago, and there, we understand, also found material relevant to the Unabomber case. Kaczynski lived in this town anywhere from 8 to 11 years. Folks say he checked out books from the library that were an unusual sort of books, that is, mainly those in a language other than English. He described himself to some of his neighbors as a disabled Vietnam vet, and his neighbor said he never looked like he had a job. He never looked like he was employed as long as he lived in the community. Lyndon, back to you.
Greg, from some of the information that seems to be filtering in, it appears as though he may have bought the cabin in the area in 1971, yet the Unabomber attacks didn't begin until 1978. From what you've learned from speaking to the area residents, have they noticed whether he was likely to travel quite a bit? As you mentioned, he had a bicycle that he rode into town, and yet some of these attacks, apparently the bombs were mailed from as far away as Northern California.
That's true. However, this community is remote. There are many communities like this throughout the northern plains and the Northwest where you may not see someone for 4 months or 5 months or 6 months, and it's not considered unusual. So a long departure, a long absence, is not something that folks are concerned about here.
All right, CNN's Greg Lefebvre, thank you very much. We appreciate it.
Since 1978, 3 people have been killed and dozens of others injured by mail bombs or booby-trapped packages attributed to the Unabomber. CNN's Mark Leff has more on nearly 20 years of terror.
Over the years, federal investigators have tried to recreate both the bombing suspect's appearance and his work. Over the years, nearly 18 years now, handcrafted bombs have periodically turned up in places mostly linked to high technology. Early targets involved mostly people working for universities or airlines, which prompted the FBI to codename the case Unabomber. In December 1985, a device outside a Sacramento, California computer store killed the owner when he picked it up. 2 years later, somebody got a look at a man who left an explosive outside a computer store in Salt Lake City. That description and the features in the FBI sketch are now more than 9 years old. The FBI has linked that single suspect to nearly 24 incidents around the country. Most of them hurt people. 3 times now, the victims have died. A bomb mailed from San Francisco killed an advertising executive a year and a half ago at his home near New York. And last year, less than a week after a truck bomb blew up the federal building in Oklahoma City, a timber industry lobbyist in California's capital died when he opened a package bomb at his office. Police have not linked the Unabomber suspect to Oklahoma City, but some experts believe the truck bombing led him to go after news coverage again. There is a message beyond the terror. The bomber sent letters to newspapers expressing his opposition to technology, taunting the agents trying to catch him, and offering to stop if someone would publish his manifesto. As more than 24 federal agents in San Francisco tried to catch him, Penthouse magazine publisher Larry Guccione said he'd print the letter. But by last June, the bomber raised the stakes.
And it would help if you have your identification ready.
Los Angeles International Airport went on security alert after a written threat to blow up an airliner unless the manifesto made it into major newspapers. The fear was real, but the bomber quickly said the threat was a hoax. In July, a University of California professor at the Berkeley campus where the suspect may have taught tried to begin a public dialogue with the bomber. Later last year, the Washington Post and other newspapers did publish the bomber's long message at federal authorities' request, they said, and with considerable misgivings. The New York Times publisher worried in print about turning the paper over to a man who murdered people, but he called it the right choice between bad options. There's even been a book, but since then, no more bombs. And from the beginning, FBI agents insisted good old-fashioned police work would eventually catch the man with the deadly crusade against technology. Mark Leff, CNN, reporting.
Other major story tonight, a break in the Unabomber case. FBI agents are searching the Montana cabin of former mathematics professor Ted Kaczynski. Just moments ago, we received these pictures of the suspect in custody, sitting in the back of a white truck. He lives like a hermit near the town of Lincoln. He is in custody, but he has not been charged. Jay DeDapper is live in the newsroom with the very latest. Jay.
Well, Roz, at this point, the FBI has yet to uncover a smoking gun, any bomb parts or something like that, for example, that might conclusively link this 53-year-old recluse from Montana to the 18-year reign of terror caused by the Unabomber. He is not under arrest. Not yet. At least 20 FBI agents converged on the cabin near the remote town of Lincoln, Montana, just after noon today, looking for evidence that could solve the mystery of the Unabomber. Sources say the suspect is Theodore John Kaczynski, born 53 years ago in Chicago, a graduate of a suburban Chicago high school. He earned a bachelor's degree from Harvard, a doctorate in math from the University of Michigan, and was an associate professor of math at Berkeley from 1967 to 1969. After resigning that year, authorities believe he eventually ended up in Utah during the late 70s before finally settling in Montana about 10 years ago. Kaczynski's history appears to mirror some aspects of the Unabomber, whose 16 bombings began in the Chicago area, continued in Salt Lake City, and have since 1987 emanated from the San Francisco Bay Area. The Unabomber's devices have killed 3 since 1978, including New Jersey advertising executive Thomas Moser, who died while opening mail at his North Caldwell home in 1994. The FBI's new break came less than 2 months ago after Kaczynski's family discovered old writings at his parents' Chicago house that seemed suspicious. They contacted a lawyer who called the FBI. The FBI then searched the Chicago house and, based on what they found, decided to raid Kaczynski's powerless, phoneless mountain cabin today. Now again, Kaczynski has not been arrested. He has been taken into custody, however. That is because the FBI wanted to search his cabin without any interference from him. So as at this point, tonight, the FBI has yet to release any word as to what they have found in that search in that rustic cabin. Bill.
Thank you, Jay, very much.
That is mine, but that's my third Carmen Gia.
Oh, your third Carmen Gia. They made a big thing.
Man convicted of terrorizing the country with bombs is reaching out to tell his story. Ted Kaczynski, known as the Unabomber, apparently sent a handwritten letter to at least one journalist. In it, he says he wants to speak about his mental health. His attacks killed 3 people and injured 24 others. Kaczynski was captured in 1996. Anna Werner has been covering the Unabomber case for years. Anna, good morning.
Good morning, Charlie. The letter addressed to New Yorker writer Lawrence Wright has likely been sent to several other journalists. In it, Ted Kaczynski attacks his brother, who helped authorities end the bombing spree. Kaczynski once again stands by his belief that he is not crazy.
In a handwritten letter, Ted Kaczynski, otherwise known as the Unabomber, writes, "I am ready to speak to someone from the media regarding my brother's recent comments and how they are being used to torment me." Kaczynski listed his preconditions for granting an interview, including, "Tell me who you are, why I should trust you, and affirm that you understand that I am not mentally ill."
The FBI says an American Airlines 727 with 80 persons aboard landed safely today at Washington's Dulles International Airport after a small bomb exploded in a mail pouch in the cargo hold.
For nearly 2 decades, Kaczynski sent bombs through the mail, killing 3 people and injuring 24 more. He was captured in April 1996 and sentenced to 4 life terms. In the letter, Kaczynski refers to his brother David, who helped investigators identify him as the Unabomber. David has penned a new book detailing his brother's struggle with mental illness. In 2005, he spoke to CBS News Sunday Morning about why he tipped off law enforcement.
Clearly, he had to be stopped, and I don't think there was any other way to stop him. I sometimes think, maybe earlier in his life, he was my older brother. Maybe if I had recognized how seriously disturbed he was, I could have been more helpful to him.
Kaczynski has reached out from behind bars through handwritten letters before. Psychologist Dr. Stephen Diamond has studied Kaczynski's case.
It may very well be some kind of a repetition of his trying to be heard and gain some recognition.
We spoke with Lawrence Wright, the New Yorker writer who received the letter from Kaczynski. Wright tweeted out an image of the letter on Sunday with the caption, "The Unabomber reached out, saying, 'Thanks, Ted. You're not nuts at all.'" He described that as purely sarcastic and says he has zero interest in an interview. We also reached out to David Kaczynski, who has yet to respond. Nora?
All right, Anna, thank you. A lot of people will be curious to hear what he has to say. I feel for David, though, the brother, who really was doing what he felt was the right thing at the time, and now it's coming back.
I wonder what the mental illness is.
Yeah.
That's a good question.
Very good question.
Unnoticed for 16 years. That in itself is, you know, they couldn't catch him. They had no idea who he was. The fact that the one bit I did like was when they knew the letters were coming out of San Francisco. What they didn't know was that he was catching a bus from Montana and bringing these bombs on buses for several days to post them out of his kind of comfort zone. That in itself is insane. And imagine the bus drivers if they found out when he was on my bus, or the guy sitting next to you, "What's in the package, mate?" So, but that's how they catch him. It's the odd quirks that keep you going down the line.
That when Ted Kaczynski was a math prodigy, and when he was 16, he went to Harvard, and he was an insecure kind of unbalanced guy to begin with. You know, that genius level that sees things differently than, and he had also a strong sense of alienation. And when he was at Harvard, they did these experiments on him, on his brain, and you know, that could have, I don't know that he was born to be the Unabomber. So it presents that notion that perhaps those experiments kind of pushed him over the edge or changed the physiology of his brain.
I was very surprised about what happened at Harvard and the experiments that were done, that they were doing those, because definitely that had, I mean, well, I'll let Paul talk about it, but from what I can see, that was a game changer for someone like Ted Kaczynski and a mind like that. So I was, I don't want to say blown away.
The sketch, the famous sketch, is interestingly not of Ted Kaczynski. It is and the story behind why the sketch isn't the sketch is something that everybody would learn. But I think people would be surprised to know that there's details like that throughout the case. Like, that's one example of one of those stranger than fiction diversions that we like organically have woven into the show.